I'm Tom Brandt, Tomas at the fair, and I guess I was born and raised in San Diego on the beaches of San Diego and Baja California. Lived in Puerto Vallarta before I came up here. Came from Puerto Vallarta to Eugene and started. I was a sculptor at the time and started looking for a place to sell, and found numerous places to sell and helped create some of those places. First fair was the first fair here in Veneta. I was a metal sculptor, and you know, I came to make some money and thought it would be fun too, and both happened. I had the choice of a booth or a spot, and it was right at Main Stage and 13th, and I had all the people coming by to buy, and I had all the entertainment I could handle. And in fact, in that first fair, a photographer came by with 8mm movies and wanted to know if I could do anything different. He says, I've got lots of film, but nothing different, you know, just people, you know. And so I thought, well, how about this? And I jacked up the oxygen on the welder and shot sparks all over. And he said, that's it, that's what I want. And so he filmed that, and then, what was it, maybe 40 years later, the guy comes and says, I have film of the first fair. And then Jerry Jaffe, you know, cut it and created the first video of the fair. And I had a hunch I might be in it, you know, because there weren't too many people. And it ended up, I was about in the middle of it here, this guy with welding mask and sparks flying. And it was a good show. I liked it in the movie. The second fair, I was still a sculptor, and you know, it was great too. The third fair, I thought I'd come to enjoy myself, you know, just no problems, just enjoy. And I came to the fair and I was walking around, and something's different, you know, and finally I went, ha, I'm not a part of it, I'm just a visitor. So I went home and got my flatbed dump truck and 1.5 ton Dodge, 37 Dodge, and came back and found Cindy, and I said, Cindy, here's the truck for garbage. And there wasn't any recycling at the time. And so Cindy wanted to send me on a hay run, and I said, garbage is this truck. And I said, you just dump it in, touch the garbage once, and then you pull the lever and dump it out. And she says, ooh, that's the truck for garbage. And so I used that truck for quite a few years out here. And that third year, I might have started garbage in the third year. Seems like I did. But then I worked garbage for quite a while, and I missed a fair here and there. And then, well, I needed a way to make money. And when somebody had stolen all my equipment before, and so I thought, well, you know, I went to the dump to get metal to make beautiful lamps and trivets and sconces, and well, I'll go there and get metal and then take it and sell it. Get metal and sell it. And pretty soon I'll have money to buy welders again. And it didn't take long, and I went, look at all the stuff people are throwing away. And I thought, jeez. And so I went and fixed up my flatbed dump with bins and stuff, and started going to the dump and collecting it, and then trying to find markets. And at the time, markets were just metal. Paper, there was very little money, or cardboard, very little money. So I concentrated on metals and usable items. You know, when people come in with a box of wrapped up plates and saucers and cups and decanters wrapped up in 1952 newspaper. I started selling that stuff too. And so much of that reusable came in, and I was trying to figure out how to remedy all that stuff being thrown away, and about that time an opening on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee for Lane County came up, and so I went down to apply. I applied, and about a week later the secretary called me and says, well, the commissioners chose the applicants that they wanted to interview at the same time so that it wouldn't take a lot of their time up, and I'm sorry, but you weren't one of them. And I said, no problem. I said, but I have a right to see the commissioners, so sign me up for a half hour, an hour with one, and maybe each one. If I'm interesting enough, they'll want to hear the story. And she says, oh, well, we couldn't. Well, you can get those times. I said, or I'll do it with the others. And she said, oh, we couldn't do that. Well, we hung up. About a half hour later, she called back and she says, your time to meet with the commissioners is right along with the others. And when I walked out of there, she put thumbs up. You're on the committee. And the first meeting that we had, first meeting I was there, I started talking about recycling or saving resources. Recycling word wasn't used much. And saving resources and landfill space and all that. And this highly paid advisor from the university, nothing against them, but this guy didn't have it right. He stood up and he banged the table and he says, we have a solid waste problem. And that's what we're talking about here. This so-called recycling, no more talk about that in this committee. And, and the majority of the people on the committee thought that too. But the way I am, I didn't quit. I just kept on and devised a slideshow to show the commissioners, and eventually went to work for the county and got a project going to get recycling going. And somewhere in that time, coming to the fair, I was thinking of saving resources, and I started thinking about the fair. And I guess a first at the fair was when my daughter was probably 4 years old, probably 77 or 76 probably. Somebody had thrown away a big broken mirror at the fair, and it was dangerous to put in with everything else, so I saved it to the side, and then along the way I got the idea, I need some brown or dark bottles. And I thought, well, Main Camp's a place for that. Champagne, we know they drink champagne and everything else expensive. So I went up to the Main Camp, and where they were throwing their bottles out the back door, and found champagne bottles, and took my daughter down to Community Village where they had the Fisher stoves, and I put water-filled bottles in there, set up the mirrors to shine in the door, and in about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of moving the mirrors, follow the sun, the water was warm. And I got my daughter over there and gave her the first solar shower at the fair. And then the second solar shower at the fair was with the Lane County Office of Appropriate Technology. And of course, I helped create that. Jerry Jaffe and I created that. And then because I was so persistent, they hired me on. And that's where I started a project to really get recycling going. It was called the Materials Recovery Demonstration Project at Glenwood. I had 1,000 tons of garbage coming in a day that I could do anything I wanted with. And that was fun, and we ended up, it was a success, and started sending information out. Of course, the county didn't want it. In fact, we got booted out of the county because we were a success. And then we went out of the county to be Oregon Appropriate Technology, and then we carried it on, and the Office of Appropriate Technology, we came into the community center in, I think, 77, might have been 78, and we had a solar shower there that one of our millionaire county commissioners, Starchy Weinstein, Archie Weinstein, he didn't want us out there, and he came out and said he saw a naked lady in the shower, and that was just terrible, you know. But he hated the fair, but he didn't get his way, and one of the things I say about that is he's dead now. We're not. So we don't worry about him anymore. And then a couple of years later, I was in Community Village again with Lane Economic Development Council, and Bill Wooten ran that. Bill Wooten helped start the country fair, one of the main people. Him and Cindy were the main people. And Bill was with Lane Economic Development Council. He wanted to develop the economic stability of Lane County, well, Oregon. And his vision was, you know, like I mentioned, to really help the future, help people of the future. And that was his vision for the fair too. Sure, he liked fun too, but he did have a vision of the fair doing things like that. And you know, I've been, I guess, coming to the fair since then. I've missed a few of them, but I don't know how many years, 35, maybe close to 40, but who counts when you're going to the fair? You just want to come to the next one. Some of the changes that have happened in the fair, you know, the number one for me was going from just garbage and throwing everything away to recycling. And I've always been in, from the start, been into how to, you know, like collecting metal and making a sculpture, using this stuff, you know, and I'd like to see the fair like they call it cullet, our broken glass that has really no value. I'd like to build another furnace, melt it down and make glass bricks to help build a community center, and build it a lot cheaper than normal people would. A lot of things like that could be done. You know, we don't get much aluminum. Well, we get aluminum cans, but the nickels are worth those. But we get a lot of other aluminum, and I'd like to use some of that, build a foundry and melt that down. I've done that before, and you could do the peaches out of recycled metals or glass, you know. In fact, products, I always think of products. I think the fair should have a part in this future, and if people in the fair could create certain products, you know, a simple one, you know, on fence posts they have glass, beautiful glass things. Well, why couldn't we make them? Instead of paying $18, we could sell them for $12, and that money could go for community development by the fair. And I know there's more products. I don't have all the ideas, but I do have a lot of them. And I wish I could use them all. Recycling was a big change. The amount of people coming to fair really changed. Getting the property, buying the property, that was a big one. You know, because now we all own the fair. It's not just a piece of property, and we can do with it what we want, you know, take care of it and do better forestry, or you know, like the Indian culture that has been here all along. Other changes, well, the way we recycle. You know, when we recycled at the start, it was real primitive, because, you know, we didn't know, and we had to develop all of this stuff. And we're still developing. You know, every once in a while somebody comes up with an idea that, you know, sure, some people say, "Ooh, you're crazy, get out of here," but you know, eventually some of those suggestions turn into, you know, the best way to do things. You know, safety wise, you know, not getting cut with the glass, broken glass. And those are important, you know, the safety factor of it. My vision for the future is very similar to Bill's. You know, I want the fair to, I mean, they do a lot. They give hundreds of thousands of dollars away. They do a lot for the kids in the community and in the state probably. But I know we can do more. And, you know, the fair does a lot for the schools. But, you know, a big thing that I think about is when I graduated high school, and I've said this many times, I was fluent in auto shop, metal shop, wood shop, mechanical drawings, and I even took homemaking. And when I graduated, I could do any of that. I could have been a good mechanic. I could listen to an engine and tell you if it was a wrist pin or a rod knocking. Woodworking, metalworking. If a machine broke in metalworking, I learned how to fix it, you know. So when I graduated, I had my choice of what I wanted to do. Nowadays, they don't have a choice. They don't learn that stuff. They don't learn how to work. They don't even get a chance to, like all the different shops I had. You know, I may not have wanted, and I didn't want to be a mechanic. So I didn't go that way, but I could work on my own car when I wanted to. You know, I didn't want to be, well, I was a metal worker. I became a sculptor. But I went into carpentry, apprenticeship carpentry. I wanted to go farther. And let me tell you that right there. I worked during the day and went to school at night. And I learned it all, you know, everything. And I think that the fair needs to, I have a plan for the schools, and it may be a part of what I remember from back in LADC with Bill Wooten, but it's a plan to go back to what I had in high school, where kids get a taste of, you know, metal shop and homemaking and lots of different things. You know, an idea of mine is like Lane County parks. You know, they're okay, but they could be so much better. Lane County parks could turn into family recreation sites. And a vision I have is through the schools. I like all this stuff to go through the schools because that's what's important. You know, my grandkids, my great grandkids, you know, it's not me. It's them that counts, and we have to show them the way. But like a simple one. How many benches do the new schools in Oregon need? School benches. Why buy them from Wisconsin? Let's build them right here. Open up a damn wood shop. Open up a lot of wood shops. Sell them here. You build them and you sell them to the schools cheaper than they could get them anywhere else. The kids are learning how to work, and it's very possible, and I know this is possible, where you could have students 11th and 12th that have 2 years of experience. If they go out of high school, then don't go to college, then they can have 2 years of experience as a metal worker or as a designer for family recreation sites. Or, you know, you plan it, you design it, you have to buy the materials for this site, then you have to build it, and the kids are doing all of this. They're learning all this. You have teachers teaching them. There's jobs right there. You have to build it, then you have to run it. You have to manage it, you have to maintain it, and in 2 years, students graduating could say, yes, I managed a family recreation park for 2 years, or I maintained, or I collected the rents or whatever. But real hands-on learning, and everything else comes in on this. You know, they would learn English doing this. And you learn things easier hands-on. They learn math because you're measuring lumber. The foundations, you have to get those right. And on and on. You know, I'd like to see, things go into like food production. There's some schools producing food, but how about just about every school producing the food? Rural schools, they could produce, well, all schools could produce lettuce and spinach, things for the cafeteria, from lettuce to chickens, eggs, pigs, they could raise pigs. My mom, when I was little, she'd get 1,500 to 2,500 chicks. And I did most of the taking care. I was like 10 and 11 years old. And I did most of the taking care of them. And in 16 weeks, she sold them for fryers. And we had a freezer full of chicken. Well, the schools could do that. And you wouldn't have to buy chicken from Arkansas. And who knows what that's like and what's in it. We could have good Oregon grown chicken, grown by the students of Oregon. And for the fair to really take part in the future, this could be it, and through the schools. I always like to say that. One of the first projects I'd like to do with the schools, and I like projects, not just do good projects. I like do good projects, but they can either make money or save money. And one of those would be passive solar on schools. Out at Marcola, we've got a gym that has 2,000 square feet of concrete block wall. And if you glaze that with plastic, durable plastic, or glass, glass is way durable, it would last a lot longer. And you could paint it black or dark green, and then right away with vents in the top and the bottom, you start creating heat. And you could heat the gym, you could heat water for the showers that the kids take. You could put these things on each classroom. Very inexpensive, passive solar. And if you can heat a classroom, you're saving money and energy. You can heat a gym, you're saving more money and energy. And then that money could go to the next project, like food production. The fair's involvement could be, and it would have to start here in Veneta, but I don't see why it would start here. It should start in a few places. And like I said before, you get a project going, and it's a good project, it'll spread. And I know this will happen if we get that project going. But it's kind of hard to get the fair to get a project like that going. I'd start here in Veneta and do a passive solar thing and prove that we could save money and energy. And once that first project is started, I know the fair will want to put more money into it because it is a success, and then you could go on to other things. The simple one is benches. And there's, you just think, what does a school use? And where do they buy it? Oh, they buy it in New Jersey? Well, New Jersey can do like we're doing. We'll show New Jersey how to do what we're doing. You produce it locally. You produce the benches locally, and anything else. You got doors, you got desks, you got bleachers. A while back I was down in Cresswell, and I guess they needed new bleachers. Sometimes they buy them when they don't need them, but they bought them from Alcoa, all aluminum bleachers. What an energy drain that is. My idea would be like they did in the olden days. I'd love to see forestry come in on this big time. You have classes in forestry. What trees can be cut. Selective thinning. Let's thin these trees and we'll take them in and mill them. Classes on milling lumber. and then and then you start making products. Build the bleachers out of our resources. The deal here is once the fair funds things, a class or two, and it's a success, like before, you may have a success and you're going to get money from all over. You'll get education money, you'll get rural economic development money. I mean, there's money available, and if you have a good program, you're going to get the money. Because I can't see how schools could say no to students graduating with knowledge of, well, and a thing, not only the knowledge of going to work, but the knowledge to create their own jobs and be working before they're out of high school in some of these employment opportunities. You know, and the fair, you know, funding these school projects, it's like the fair. You know, they have the teen crews trying to show the teens how to, and get them into working the fair. And that is, you know, that is, I think, one of the important parts of the fair is the community of the workers, you know, learning to work with others. And people have ideas, you know, and these ideas, I mean, teens can come up with ideas that we don't even think of because they're in a different position than we're in. And so we need those younger people to come in. You know, it's the community, and not just the fair community. It's us learning things here, how to deal in a community, and then going back to our own communities and trying to do the same things. But in my experience out in Marcola and other places, you know, it's tough. You have some tough communities sometimes. But when you get good things going where their kids can achieve something or gain something from a project, the parents start looking, and they start wanting more of that. And so that, you know, the fair could really do something there. Back to the teens, you know, there are things that, like in recycling, that happened. I'll mention one of them. I was gone for a couple of years, and I came back, and I got off my route on River Loop, and I saw there was need on the plastics sort. And so I got up there and started doing a thing, and I just saw something wrong. So I grabbed a young person and put him in my position. I went up on the dock, and I think my grandson was with me at the time, and we were kind of looking and seeing how the operation was going. And he said, "Papa," he said, "that's a mess down there." And I said, "Yes, it is. They can't even find the thing that they're trying to sort out." And from that, what we did, you know, all the like milk jugs were coming through the whole line. And there were people having to move the milk jugs to find their Nancy's containers or whatever. And so the first thing that Garrett and I did is we brought the milk jug container from the end of the line, we put it at the head of the line, and then that got the milk jugs, the big things, out of that line, and then everybody could see better. And the sheet plastic was covering everything, so we started getting that out. Like, I think that now they call it a pre-sort. And let me tell you, if you have that junk in there, it's a mess. And another thing that came out of that is that you have broken glass. You have juices from the bottom of the barrel, and who likes that? And so we started thinking about that, and when I went home that year, I started trying to figure out how to get the juices out. And what I ended up doing, what Garrett and I ended up doing, was we made 2x4s. Just well, they were about that wide, but longer, and they were spaced about like that. And then I put it at a slant, And then Garrett and I collected bottle caps and forks and broken glass, and we put it in a barrel, and then Garrett dumped it slowly on this grate, this wooden grate, and the bottles and cans rolled down the grate, and the juice and the broken glass, the majority of it, went through the grate onto the ground. And we went, wow! And so we, there wasn't time or anything, and you know how new ideas are. And I'm not blaming anybody, but everybody we talked to about installing this thing, we didn't have time. We didn't have room. It wouldn't work. Well, Randy Waugh, him and I, and a couple of friends, a guy named Gary, started building it anyway. And we got a metal grate. And we built it at the start of the sort. And we even built a dock right there so that the barrels would come off the truck without going onto the ground, onto the dock, which saves the back. And then we built it so that it was at a height where you wouldn't have to pick the barrel up and dump it. You'd tip the barrel, and stuff would start coming down out, and the bottles and cans would roll out, and all the juice and everything. Of course, we had to build, we didn't want it all going on the ground, but we had to build a big funnel underneath, and then everything goes down that. And where does the juice go? It falls straight down. So we put a screen there, and all the glass and the spoons hit the screen and would go into another container. And it really worked great. And I think they called it the Slimelator. And that first year that we had that in, people went, our hands are dry. They aren't cut. They aren't all wrinkled. And so it was a big success. And then I think it was the next year, we built it for the plastic sort. And it does the same thing. But I'm trying to figure out what to do with the stuff that goes through. The juice, well, at the beginning of the fair, it probably had lots of alcohol in it. And I thought, let's make some alcohol to run a car. But nowadays, I don't think there's much alcohol in it. It's more juices and things. I'd still like to ferment it and see what kind of alcohol we could get out of it. Because if there's, sugar going in there, you're going to get some alcohol. It wouldn't be drinkable, but maybe you could run a stove or something on it. And all the glass and the spoons. I never thought we could do anything except dump that. But lately, I've been thinking, how could you take that and just fuse all of that stuff into an art project, or again, like a brick to help build the community center. Some ways of, I know that building the community center, I said we can do it a lot cheaper. Why don't we, I've got trees. I'll donate some trees to make some big beams out of. Have a school mill the beams and use those in the community center. Let's try to do it the way we do things. I know there's some people that don't do it the way we do it, but we've got to get around to the way the fair should do things, and kind of on the cheap but good. In talking about building a community center with things that we can donate, glass blocks, glass tiles, wooden beams. The fair, during the fair we feed a lot of people. During the year we don't feed so many people. You have retreats and meetings, and they feed people. You have a couple of youth things that go on out here that they feed the kids and their parents, I guess. And I think that we should separate feeding people year-long needs, separate that from the fair. I say we build a community center with a kitchen to do the year-round stuff. Big enough to do that. Maybe a little larger for expansion, of course, but just the year-round stuff. And I believe that we could do it a lot cheaper by when the fair comes, and it's possible the government would have some of this that we could, a nonprofit could get for free maybe, because it would be the thing I'm thinking of, a community resource too. But kitchens on 40-foot tractor trailers, we could have 1 or 2 of them. If the government thought it right that we would have them, we'd have them for free. When the fair comes, they're mothballed all year long. There's no expense. When the fair comes, you pull them in and you have them designed to connect with the other kitchen. So then you've got a big kitchen for the fair. And then I've been voicing my opinion about the durables. We want to make sure we have a kitchen that can wash those durables. Not having to work 4 o'clock in the morning trying to wash durables. We've got to have a system, and our system can go, teach other people how to do it. But I think the best part of the tractor trailer rigs with kitchens is that they're mothballed for most of the year. But yet, what happens if there's a big landslide, like up in Washington, a tsunami, a forest fire? Our crews could be the first ones on the site feeding people. There's other things, and that would be real community there. I mean, it could be Oregon, well, it could be more than just Oregon. If something happens in Washington or California, we could be there feeding people in no time at all. And I think it could be a lot cheaper than building a big kitchen for the fair. We need the kitchen for year-round, but we don't need the kitchen for the fair year-round. And expense is a big thing with that community center. And I think, which is happening, all the thoughts of passive solar and PV panels for electricity and gray water and, reusing the gray water, composting, all of that is being talked about. But I joined that committee to make sure that it was talked about a little more than maybe it would be otherwise. Because that's a big part. What we do out there is teaching the community. What we do here at the fair could teach the world how to do things. There's so many, composting toilets. The county commissioners one time, not the county commissioners, but the enforcement people, building inspectors got me at my place one time, sanitation, because I didn't have a flush toilet. And so I had to go to this commissioner meeting, and they were going to fine me $280 a day, and it was terrible. Well, what I did at the time, I drilled holes down into the ground around trees, and I'd go in that, little dirt over it, go in that, never a smell, never a fly, never a sanitation problem. So what I did is I dug between 2 holes, an old one, and you could, with the slides that I took, you could see the levels of the decomposition. And down in the bottom, you couldn't see where it was earth or what, maybe a little toilet paper left, white or pink. But anyway, I took these slides, and before they were going to pin me to the wall because of a sanitation problem, I set up a slideshow, and when it was my turn to speak, I stood up there, and I didn't have to talk much, but I showed them slides of the decomposition of what I was doing. And at the end I said, I don't have a sanitation problem, you guys do, because what you do at home eventually gets to the river. I said, maybe I should fine you guys $280 a day until you rectify it. And there wasn't a word. And I never was bothered again. The county knows what I have, and they don't bother me. Well, because I think some of them at the time, Jerry Rust was on the commission then, and he knew about compost toilets. And what a thing out here, a tough one to figure out. Composting, well, they call it human manure or something. Humanure. But what a project that would be if we could figure that one out. And I think I have a lot of the things figured out, but you need an area to compost it safely and everything. But if you use, well, my idea is those big green dumpsters, not the monsters, just the larger ones, and you'd have it set up so a forklift could come in and put those underneath, and everybody would go in them, and you'd have to have a good, I won't come up with the name, but I know the crew would, a good toilet crew that would have to really, not lollygag, they'd have to maintain all the time. But all the maintenance is chopped straw, some soil, some green stuff, put it in there, keep it covered. And when it gets 3/4 full, this bin, forklift comes in, pulls it out, puts another one in, takes it out to the place and it's really mixed, like we do our compost here, the organics. It would be really mixed already because of the constant covering. It wouldn't be just awful. It would be, layered. And then you'd take it out and you'd dump it and cover it, and it would be you'd have to have a pan so you wouldn't have any runoff and everything. But we've done that out at Outer Mongolia. It's a clay surface there that we put down to do composting. Nowadays we don't need that because we've got it down more and it doesn't run off. But with composting toilets, you'd have to, for safety's sake, have that pan so no runoff. And if we could do that here at the fair, maybe California could learn something about it. Let's quit using drinking water to flush your toilet. It's amazing. It's amazing how they're doing down there. Spraying, grow food. Well, you have 90-degree weather, so you spray water all over the place in droplets. Well, they say that 80% of the water they spray evaporates, doesn't even get to the plants. What a waste. But you think Big Ag is going to quit? No, that's easy to do. Drip system's going to cost us money. Well, you either do the job right or you get out of the business. Let locals take over. We've already brought in the teens and the youth and my grandkids and great-grandkids and your great-grandkids. and that is the main focus for me. Nowadays I see it's a big waste of what we're doing, dumbing down of education, and I want to change that, and the fair could change that. You may not know it out here, you may just be having fun, but you may see something on the ground and pick it up and put it in the right barrel. But somebody sees you do that and they go, oh. And they'll think about it next time. They won't drop their paper plate. They'll go put it in the right thing. So everybody out here is a teacher. And I think that's what the fair should be, is a teacher. We could be the core of, and I'd like it to be soon, not 20 years down the line. I don't want to be doing the same thing 50 years from now, I will if I'm forced. But I want us all to come more together and get more of the right idea, to not just out here to have fun, but we're here to teach and to make things better for our grandkids and their grandkids. I mean, I don't see anything else. It's not money. It's not a nice house. It's the future and the kids that we really have to work for. And I want, the board, the Country Fair board, to start thinking more. You know, I've mentioned this before at evaluation meetings and things, but you know, we have, you know, going back to funding some classes, projects to get them going to show people, and then maybe grants after that, which is available. You know, there's transportation problems, fuel for our transportation. You know, Bill Wooten at one time had me go all in Lane Economic Development Council, had me go all over, into California, into Washington, all over Oregon, on anything to do with alternative fuels. We could do the same thing with the schools. Fund a science class. Start dealing with hydrogen. You know, what about carbon monoxide? You know, I've always had the thought, which I don't know enough about it, maybe one day I'll learn, but we have too much carbon in the air. Well, you know, why not? There is a way to make carbon monoxide out of that. Carbon dioxide, make carbon monoxide. It's just, it takes a lot of heat and pressure, I guess. But if we could do that, create carbon monoxide out of what we don't want up in the atmosphere, we'd have a fuel. We could run cars and trucks on carbon monoxide. There's other things, you know. I know this refrigerator I have right over here runs on a thermocouple, and if you put electricity to it, you get heat or cold. The refrigerator. Well, if you put heat and cold to it, say like this cold, ambient temperature, and you put magnified sun on the other end of the thermocouple, what do you get? You get electricity. You know, I went to a professor at the U of O one time, a long time ago, and I said, you know, thermocouples, why can't they be used for that? He said, oh, they are out on sites up on the mountain, you know, but they're expensive. You have to have the propane to do it, and it costs too much. You don't get anything out of it, really. It costs to do this. And I said, well, in Oregon and a lot of other places, people have wood stoves going all year long. Maybe not all year long. Summertime we get a little bit of a break, but all winter long. And I said, what about a thermocouple on my wood stove? And he went, you know, I never thought of that. He says, that could work. You're burning your wood stove. In fact, even before I knew as much as I know about it now, I always wanted to build a wood stove. I've built wood stoves before, but I wanted to build one where you could keep warm, and connected to it was your refrigerator. You burn wood, you got an ice maker. You keep your beer cold. Or your Nancy's yogurt cold. That's what mine would do. But there are other alternatives and nobody's looking at it. And sure, the fair looks at, you know, Energy Park. I think the fair could do so much more in Energy Park. Figure out things that people could take home and do. And then their kids would be educated by that, and the kids' friends would come over and say, wow, what's it? They'd be educated by it. The fair needs to get going on some stuff. I don't want to be coming to the fair the same old all the time. Sure, little changes here and there. I want to start making some big changes, you know. The way things are running nowadays, if we don't make changes, we're in for trouble. But if we start making the changes, you know, voting, lots of people don't even vote. Well, if we make good changes and people see those changes, and we start talking about voting to make more of these changes, people will be educated by that. And we could get people to vote for the right people. You know, you have people to save the grizzly bears and the polar bears and the wolves, and save the whales and save the forests. I think that if everybody got together and quit trying to save everything, focus on one thing, put all that money from the Sierra Club and everybody else into one focus, get the right people elected. And those people would right away make the changes to save the polar bear and to save the forest, quit clear cutting everything. I mean, that's my vision. And the fair, you know, getting people to vote for at the fair is a hard one. But that needs to be worked on, and it is being worked on. But if we can get people to vote, then in the larger picture we could make big changes. Like, it would be automatic. You get the right people in there, it would be automatic that we'd have alternative fuels. We'd quit giving subsidies to the oil companies, and we would have our alternative fuels. Spend money on that instead of digging it or pumping it from the earth anymore. Pumping, you know, toxic liquids down into the earth just to get a bucket of oil to run my car into Eugene. I think a lot of people now, but I think more people are going to look at that. And we could be the Oregon Country Fair could be a big part in all of this. We all have the ideas. It's just that we have to have the backing. And there are people in the fair that, like my project for passive solar in schools. You know, I don't know how to do all of that. I don't know how to write a grant, but I can give you the information to write down. And we need grant writers. We need more people to organize things to get them going. Passive solar, how do you set the class up? Get the right teachers to really do this. I know in recycling, you know, on that first project, I didn't know much about it. Well, on the LEDC project, where we built the first rural recycling facility, it was a great thing. Had a county commissioner opening on TV and everything. But I didn't know how to do that. I knew the information, and so a few of us got together and we developed a recycling safety program. We developed tests, you know, testing. Well, at one time we got 11 people from around the county. This is spreading the education again. 11 people from around the county that we gave a test to, what they knew about recycling. Well, they didn't like the test because they didn't know it. They didn't know the answers. That was what the test was for. Because at the end of the project, we gave them the same test. And they went, oh, I know this and this and this, the price of aluminum and what this is good for, what we save and everything. You know, they hated it at the start, but when they took the test at the end of the project, they loved it because they had all the answers. And that's, you know, we need to teach. The fair needs to do more in the community to get more going. This is fun out here. I love it. But that's not all there is. We need to really get going and start. And my thing is with the schools. I mean, I could have started a lot of projects where I would have made a lot of money, but I don't want that. I want projects to go with the schools so the schools can save money, save energy, and teach the kids the way of the future.